Hi, I'm Mike Coyle, and this is the story of the Blackpool Lifeboat, the ladies and the Reverend gentlemen. The history of the Blackpool Lifeboat is characterised with the manly doings and bravery of men in the teeth of a relentless sea. However, little is written of the others who, without their intervention, would not have established a lifeboat in Blackpool 156 years ago. This is a story of alternative heroics, how a preacher historian, a congregational minister, and a group of ladies with foresight were able to stir a community to found the town's first lifeboat. Until the 1800s, it had fallen to the fishing families of the town, the Bickerstaffs, the Jollies, the Parkinsons, the Parrs, the Rimmers, the Salthouses, the Stanhopes, and the Swarbriggs, to launch their boats in order to save lives, save vessels, and save cargoes. All too often, and in spite of their best intentions, rescue efforts were uncoordinated and dependent on who and what boats were available at the time. The prospect of a fully functioning, coordinated service was really some time away. That isn't to say there wasn't a groundswell of opinion in favour of a lifeboat service. However, it took a series of disparate events to prompt eventual action. In 1837, the Reverend William Thornburn, Vicar of St John's in Blackpool, was engaged in writing his historical and descriptive account of Blackpool and its neighbourhood. Coincidentally, he'd been writing about the shipwrecks along the Fylde coast. When looking from his window, he noticed a commotion in the sea opposite. He put down his pen and ran down to the beach to witness the grounding of a brig on a sandbank. He was probably witnessing the wreck of the Royal Oak in November 1837. She was inbound for Liverpool from Carrickfergus. Following the incident, he persuaded the Liverpool Dock Commissioners to contribute £20 towards the £100 required to fit out a lifeboat. About the same time, the Reverend Richard Raby Redman of Victoria Congregational Church raised the issue of a need for a lifeboat with his congregation. A visitor, Mrs. Brown of Manchester, heard the impassioned plea for establishment of a lifeboat and showed deep interest in the idea. She immediately contributed £100 to assist any local fund to be formed. Another initially anonymous lady and her daughter pledged a further £250. The lady and her daughter were revealed to be Mr. and Mrs. Hopkins, widow and daughter of the late Robert William Hopkins of Preston. Miss Atherton of Manchester donated a further £100. This table shows the contributions made towards the lifeboat. Some quite small, relatively, 10 shillings, some at around a guinea, but others at £350 and one at £500. Mrs. Eccles of Blackburn provided the land onto which would be built the first lifeboat station in Lytham Road, and that lifeboat station still stands today. In March 1864, a lifeboat committee was formed, and by May of that year, a coxswain appointed, Mr. Robert Bickerstaff. Bickerstaff's telescope remains at the lifeboat station today. The first lifeboat, built by Forrest of Limehouse, London, and transported free by the London and North Western Railway, was launched with great ceremony on the 14th of July, 1864. Its name reflected the generous donation of Mrs. Hopkins and her daughter. It was called the Robert William, and by September of that year was facing its first challenge. In the teeth of a howling gale, that Robert Williams set out to the aid of a brig, the St. Michael, foundering whilst on its way from Le Havre to Fleetwood. They rescued 14 crew from the damaged vessel. From then on, the Blackpool Lifeboat would rescue 163 seafarers on 121 shouts, and all that thanks in part to the ladies and the Reverend gentlemen. The naming ceremony of the the Samuel Fletcher of Manchester at a later time, on the 29th of September 1885, shows the Robert William on the far left. It's associated there with the Lytham lifeboat, the Charles Biggs, the St. Anne's lifeboat, the Laura Janet. My great-grandfather was the coxswain of the Laura Janet. Blackpool's new lifeboat, the Samuel Fletcher of Manchester, is on the right. This picture shows the Robert Williams setting out for the Bessie Jones rescue in 1880 from a postcard widely published and sold. It's actually attributed to an oil painting by George Barrett of the Washington Hotel in Blackpool. On that incident, they saved the life of 4 crew, and because of the circumstances, the RNLI awarded silver medals. The Blackpool Lifeboat crew here showing off their medals. Here we see the launching of the Robert William. You can see the launch trailer wheels on the right. The trailer would have been drawn by horses to the nearest launch point to the casualty, often several miles. This shows the Robert William at sea with his 10 oarsmen. I'd like to thank David Forshaw and Brenda Warburton and the Lifeboat Enthusiast Society for their help, their photographs and the materials for this presentation.